like it. Well, it's good to be back here. I'm just returning from more of my travels, which I enjoy. I'll grab my flicker here. So I was just in Germany and Vienna, and I was doing my study of the book of Hebrews, and we're in chapter 3 right now, and I got so much out of it. I love God's word, I really do. I always get so much out of it every time I read it. And one of the things you discover, which we'll get into soon, is the fact that God's word really is living and active, sharper than a two-edged sword, dividing even soul and spirit, and has this ability to challenge us and give us new insights, no matter how many times you've read it. I've been through the book of Hebrews, I bet you 30, 35 times, and doing a deep study here of this topic, I got so much out of it. So I'm going to do something unique today. I'm literally going to break every homiletic rule, Derek, that you have when you're on preaching and instead of giving you just the output of my study, I'm going to bring you into the study today. And I want you to get out of this what I got out of it. So if you have a pencil or a pen and your Bible, please be ready to take notes, because you're going to want to take notes today because of some of the insights here that are really important. And then I'll give you kind of what I got out of it as far as the message for us today, what God has in store for us today. And some of you have heard this saying, carpe diem, and that's seize the day. And the whole idea of carpe diem is it's literally historically rooted in, hey, seize the day because there's no hope in the future. Just do whatever you can today and make it impactful. The Germans kind of add the and the Nacht and the night to it as well. I guess it has something to do with the beer. That's my guess. But the idea is that we are to seize the day, and you'll see this in this text, with hope. With hope. We have a future hope. It's totally different than folks who want to seize the day because they have no hope. And that is really what's getting a lot of us in trouble, as we walk around without no hope. And the vice to the virtue of hope is despair. So we all have this tendency toward despair. We end up walking in despair. I'm going to introduce some very key Greek words, and I want to tell you something about my theory about the Bible. The Bible is written in two dead languages. So you got Koine Greek, yeah, there's some Aramaic for those of you who are particular, but you got Koine Greek, and then you've got Hebrew. And my theory is the reason why the Bible is written in dead languages, and the Koine Greek was the language of the common man of the day. It was brought in by Alexander the Great, and it was very much a common man's language until about the 3rd century. I believe that the reason why God chose Koine Greek to write the New Testament in and Hebrews is because when the language dies, guess what happens to the meaning? The meaning of the word dies with it. Language grows over time, and words end up meaning things that they never meant before, right? So we used to sing all the time, right? And say, we'll have a gay old time, right? About a happy time. When I say that, what do you guys think? You think it's something totally different, right? It's just the way language is. And I believe that God did that because he wanted the meaning to remain steady and where it is so you don't miss his intention. And Hebrews, which is really interesting, when Israel became a nation again in 1947, the founding families of the nation of Israel wanted everyone to speak Hebrew, biblical Hebrew. So when you go to Israel today, it is the same biblical Hebrew that was spoken centuries ago is spoken today in Israel. Kind of fascinating. It's the only language in the history of the world that died out as a spoken language and came back again. So it's kind of fascinating. Anyone here speak more than one language? Anyone here? Like Pig Latin doesn't count. How about, is English a second language for anybody here? Okay, so for a couple of you, so as you know, when you go from one language to an import, it's hard in the import language to find something that's maybe as more granular as you really want. Greek, for example, is very, very granular, So the English word we have to capture the meaning, I'll give you the one example that we all know, and you should know because I've taught it here a couple times at least, and that is the word love, right? So when we say love, we say I love my car, I love my wife, I love God, and we better mean something different when we say I love my car and I love my wife and I love my car. So we should mean something a little bit different there. But love, there's 4 words in Greek, and only 3 are found in the Bible. So, right, we have agape love, which is sacrificial, unconditional love. I've heard it defined as just unconditional love. That's no. It's unconditional and sacrificial, meaning that loving the other costs you something. So when you read 1 Corinthians 13, which is read at all the weddings, the love verses, right? The word there is agape. But when you read it at weddings, what's happening is you read it as feelings, which is storge. It's affections, which isn't a word you find in the Bible. So I always have, when I do weddings, I have it read as saying, agape love is patient, agape love is kind, agape love is long-suffering. And I define what it is so people understand. In a marriage, guess what? And when you are, and as a parent and as a friend, when you're loving somebody in an agape way, it's costing you something. You're the sacrifice because you're loving that person in that way unconditionally, knowing and seeing them. As a parent, you're sowing vision into your kids that a certain behavior is not all defining of them, is that they're better than that. You're sowing hope into them because you're sowing unconditional sacrificial love. Then we have eros, which is where we get the word erotic, and it's sexual love. And then you have philia, which is brotherly love. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. But when you look at the English import language, it says love, right? So you see how much you miss sometimes? It's not always the case, but sometimes you do miss a word. And as we go through the text here, I'm going to give you these Greek words because it's so important, because the English import, no matter what translation you get, kind of misses it. So I want to really deep dive into that today. And those of you who speak more than one language, you kind of intuitively get it. I was always bad with languages. I'm an engineer. It includes computer languages. I'm just not good at languages. My son is very good at languages. He's at Liberty taking a 300 series linguistics classes for fun. Who takes linguistics for fun? But that's my son. He loves languages. And it'll be interesting to see what God does with that. So what I'm going to do today, typically my pattern with you all, is I like to read through the scripture and I highlight key words so you guys kind of can see where I'm going. And then I kind of give a little commentary on a verse or two, and then I get into the message. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to have some things highlighted, and then I'm going to read straight through the text, and then we're going to unpack each verse. Then I'm going to get into what does that have to do with us today, and what is God teaching us today. So you guys ready? Like we've been ready like 10 minutes ago, brother. All right, I hear you. Calm down. Agape love is patient. All right, so let's go into the text, right? All right. Make sure I got it on. And go. Not really working for me today. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to start here with verse 12. All right, now we got it. All right, you ready? Take care, brethren, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. But encourage one another, day after day, as long as it's still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance, firm until the end. While it is said, today, if you hear his voice, make sure it goes. All right, it's not working with me today. Come on, chop, chop. Can someone do that for me? It's killing me. I'm like 0 for 2 here. There you go. Do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me. For who provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moses? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient. So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. And I want you to notice something here. So this is in the New American Standard Version. So if you see some of these words here that are italicized, well, I didn't do that. The NASB does that because that's what's implied. Again, when you go from a source language to its import, and especially how English is structured, it implies led by Moses, right? Or else it would be like came out of Egypt by Moses, right? Well, we know it means led. Or for who provoked when they had heard. Well, no, who provoked who? Who provoked him? So the context is God. So they put that in italicized because the translators are just letting you know, saying, hey, this is a word-for-word translation. This word in italicized is implied. You see how that goes? I'm telling you that because we're going to take this and I'm going to bring you into my study, and then I'm going to read the scriptures with all the context of what we just unpacked in the study. Something that translators don't do because you're going from one language to another, and that's something you miss. Now, when people read this verse, and you'll see it again in Hebrews 9, the first thing that we do is we import our culture into it a little bit, as far as I'll say our church culture, our capital C church, and we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, can somebody lose their salvation? This has nothing to do with that, right? And this is what's so important when you're reading the Bible, and with whatever you bring to it, you start looking at this going, oh my gosh, right? Well, what does this mean? Well, let's first of all at least get the context that he gives us. He's pointing into history and really is quoting Psalm 95. Well, by quoting Psalm 95 is quoting an historical event dealing with the wilderness wandering of Moses. Well, what's that event? Well, the desert wandering referenced, again, is Psalm 95. This is going back from Numbers 14, goes all the way through Numbers 17. The people would not enter the promised land in faith because they were filled with fear. I'll tell you one thing. Faith and fear can never occupy the same territory in your heart. They can't do it. One will inevitably drive out the other. They're filled with fear. Caleb came back with a good report of the land, saying, hey, God's got this. Their protective hedge is gone. We could take them. And then all the Israelites like, there's giants in the land. We can never take them. Again, filled with fear. I can't say the word fear today. Isn't that funny? Maybe it's the Frederick Fair. You're like, what's the Frederick have to do with Moses? So I don't know either. But they were filled with fear. Well, God separated, as the story moves along in Numbers, God separated the true believers from the unbelievers through judgment. 2 chapters later, before they entered the promised land. And this was the rebellion of Korah. Sometimes we just stop at what was referenced here, but there's a whole context here. Hebrews isn't going to retell the whole story, right? It's quoting a psalm which points to the whole story. Well, what happened with Korah? God basically said, hey, the people were rebelling. God said, great. Those of you with Korah stand over there. Those of you with Moses stand over there. And earth swallowed up the followers of Korah because they weren't true believers. They weren't true Israel. They were among Israel, but they weren't Israel where it mattered, in the heart. So they were swallowed up in judgment. Well, this is important because we just got done hearing about Jesus being our high priest in chapter 2 and chapter 3, and brings us right here to the second half of Hebrews 3. Because Jesus' redemptive work on the cross is the new Exodus. Jesus himself is the Passover lamb, and spiritually, Christians parallel Israel in the wilderness, passing through baptism as Israel passed through the Red Sea. That's referenced a couple times in the New Testament. Jesus is our guide and our spiritual rock as we wander in the wilderness of this world that is not our home. We are being warned that not everyone who wanders with us is of us. Get this. Everyone who wanders with us is not of us. We should not grumble against God, and we should not test him as we wander. And finally, nobody will be able to enter paradise because of unbelief. So you see, disobedient and unbelief. Each one of us, as we walk among this world, we walk around different people. We have different relational circles. Even with our same family circle, right? As you go off to school, you're with different people. When Dad goes off to work, he's with different people. When Mom goes off with work, people are with different people. Those are your wilderness experience as you're walking through this world. You're walking among people who wish you to do well and wish you harm. Not everybody who is among you is truly with you. But you got to wonder with God. You've got to wonder with him and knowing that in his sovereignty, he got it and he will accomplish what he means to accomplish. So as we get into Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12, we're going to jump into something, but there's a really important point here. And that is when we get into this next section dealing with brethren. So brethren here is ethnic brethren. Ethnic brethren. It's different from verse 1 in chapter 3, where Paul says, holy brethren. That means, of course, I landed a plane. I believe Paul wrote Hebrews. So it says holy brethren, then talks about us, we, us. These are Jewish believers in the Lord. Then he switches in verse 12 and says, take care, brethren. So let's go to the next slide and unpack this a little bit. So here's how the text goes, and as I go through, I'm going to say number 1, number 2, and so you can follow along here with these words. It's very, very cool. So verse 12 says this, take care, brethren, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. The first word we see for evil is paneros. This isn't Panera, so Panera bread is not evil. It's paneros. Okay, I just want to make sure you got that. Sometimes carbs can be evil, but this word is distinguished from another word used for evil. And that word is kakos. And that word is used for evil or wicked is how you'll find it translated in your English Bible. This is very important because someone who is kakos is content with being evil within themselves. Someone who is evil, meaning paneros, is malicious and desires to spread their evil among others, such as Korah and some of the followers of Korah. They were trying to bring many followers after themselves, and they were spreading this wickedness of unbelief and sowing disunity among the people. Now, paneros is a very, very, very interesting word because it's used in 2 very key passages in the Bible. First, in Matthew 6:13, which is the Lord's Prayer. So on my way up here, I was listening to the Lord's Prayer being sung. I don't know if you ever heard it. It's beautiful. Josh Groban has a very good version of it, but just listening to the Lord's Prayer sung is a beautiful thing. So paneros is used there where it says this, quote, and do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from paneros, from evil. That's why some of your Bibles will say deliver us from the evil one, because paneros is the word used when referencing Satan. Very different way of seeing this passage, is it not? Very, very different. In Ephesians 6:16, where we have the form of God, you have paneros and not kakos. Paneros is used here, and it says this, quote, Ephesians 6:16, in addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, with which you'll be able to extinguish the flaming arrows of the paneros, the evil one. Interesting. Thus, paneros is an unbeliever. You got to get this. A paneros is an unbeliever. Now, before we get to the number 2, the second word here, I want to do a little mention here. I have it circled here, the article A. So a theist is somebody who believes in a personal God. So I've taught here before where everyone says, oh, what about all these religions of the world? You could have 30 trillion religions, doesn't matter. You can only have 7 logical possibilities about what that religion says about God. 90% of religions fall into three categories. Pantheism, always God. So you have Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. You have atheism. You have secular humanism. You have a form of Buddhism that is atheism. They'll say non-theistic. I call that distinction without a difference. And then you have, of course, theism. So you have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all believe in a personal God. That's about where we end in common, right? But it's all a theist. It means you believe in God. So what's an atheist then with the Article A? This is the interactive portion of the sermon. An atheist is it's not, right? The article negates the word in front of it, right? So an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God. Want to hear something interesting? The early Christians were called atheists because they denied the Roman gods. The Romans had gods for everything. So early Christians were called atheists because they denied the existence of the Roman gods. Kind of fascinating. But that article is really, really, really important because we're going to get to the second word, pistia. Now, this word is derived from a Greek word pistos, where we get the word believer. So, apistia is what? Not a believer, literally. Everybody the only one that finds that really, really cool. So once you see that, that's so interesting. So that's an unbeliever. Now, the heart is cardia, kind of interesting, right, where we get the word heart. Now, the heart in the Bible, when we say this in church sometimes, you give your heart to Christ. It's not just give your feelings to Christ. The heart in the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, refers to the totality of who you are as an inner man and inner woman. This is your mind, your emotions, your will, your thinking process. All those things is your heart. It encompasses everything. This is what makes you in the image of God. So when you give your heart to Christ, you're giving everything to Christ. If you just give your emotions to Christ, then you're treating Jesus like Oprah, and you'll be all over the place, right? You'll still be thinking like this world, and you'll be blaming Christ for things that you're implementing that have nothing to do with him. Your emotions are the process, the output of how you think, tying into last week with my brother's teaching. It's really important how you think. So then we get the phistemi, which means to stand aloof. So falling away here, see, the import is falls away. This is someone who stands aloof, who puts themselves away. They stand away on their own in their heart, their inner being. They're physically present, but they're standing away. So if you reread this verse, take care, brethren, that there not be any one of you who are unbelievers with a heart, with the totality of their heart, mind, soul, who is standing aloof from God among you. This is really critical. So let's take the next verse. Very, very cool. So let's take the next one. So verse 13. But encourage one another day after day, as long as it's still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Today references an era of opportunity. It's not referring to sometimes the word today that is capitalized references today. We're talking about almost like the end times beginning kind of thing. And sometimes it's referencing a 24-hour day. This is talking about right now, an era of opportunity. Believers are to challenge one another, and this is where we get into parakaleo. So this is used for every type of calling someone next to another. In fact, the Holy Spirit's called a paraclete because he's called alongside us. So we are called to encourage one another, and this is to challenge one another, to exhort, to bring a defense. Contextually, this is that type of challenge that we're supposed to do. Then we get into number 2, scaruno, which figuratively is applied to the mind in this verse. You're hardened in your thinking. When you're hardened in your heart, you're hardened in your thinking. You literally put up a little blocker in your mind. So this is deceit by the great deceiver because it always begins in the mind. An idea is meant to impact your thinking process. Today, big time, we are literally being manipulated with language. And language is not unimportant. Because the minute you use a certain word or term, you are importing the idea that that term embraces. So using your language properly is incredibly important. Now, no matter what you believe, do you think it's an accident that it went from global warming, it was global cooling in the 70s, to climate change? You can't get any more ambiguous than climate change. Yeah, it happens every day. So how could you, land a plane, right? But you import on that, the evil humans are the ones causing all these things all over the place. You haven't traveled. We do pretty darn good, believe me. We're called to be good stewards of the earth that God gave us. We're called to be good stewards of it. It's important to do that. But the word term usage is very important. So words are changing very fast today, and be very, very careful. Because when you grab a word, what happens is you're importing an idea that's something that's assumed as true underneath. You don't even realize it. So you focus too much on what people say, but not what they're assuming is true. So watch yourself. You'll find yourself going, what the heck, man? I find myself challenging myself all the time going, wait a minute, what's that mean? Slow down and think about what's being assumed. Because bad ideas are the key to changing you baby steps in the wrong direction or baby steps in the right direction. Now we get to the third word that, forget about how it's spelled, it's pronounced literally pae. This is deceitfulness, okay? This deceitfulness is a strategic deceitfulness. In fact, when you read the Greek lexicon, it says strategery or trickery. So there's a strategy with the deceit. That's the important part here. So sin, no doubt, leads you to start playing the movie. If you ever heard this term, you do it all the time. You start playing the movie, which means is that mentally you start living out or thinking about the direction you want to go. When a couple shows up in my office for marriage counseling, trust me, someone's played the movie of what it means to leave. And believe me, it's a fiction movie. It's a fiction movie. That's how deceit works. So then guess what's happening? You start playing the movie over and over. Then you start talking with your friends about your movie. They become characters in your movie, and then you start playing it out. It's fascinating. Be careful what you strategically set your mind on. This is why the Bible tells us in Romans 12:2 to renew our minds. Then we'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. People say, I don't know how to find God's will. The first thing to do is tell me about the movie you're playing in your mind. And we all do this. And it gets you in trouble. Sometimes you can't help it. It's like, it bugs you sometimes, honestly. So let's read the verse again. But encourage one another. Let's challenge, exhort one another day after day, as long as it's still called today. So that none of you will be hardened, will have your mind hardened by the deceitfulness, the trickery, the strategy of the enemy of sin. Oh, believe me, it tricks you. It wouldn't be tempting if it wasn't tempting. I mean, of course you play the movie out and you don't realize what you're doing. So let's get to the next verse, Hebrews 3:14. I hope you find this interesting, because when we put it all together and then we unpack what it means today, it's very, very important. So verse 14, for we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. So the first word, katoshomen, I'm not saying that one right. That one always gets me. That's okay. This literally means seize. Do you see where I got the message title? Come on now. Come on, church. season today. You get it? All right. And I was in Germany, having schnitzel, so it all kind of came together. So this literally means seize. Hold fast. That's what hold fast means. Like now, act. This is very much a challenge, a call to us. Don't squander the opportunity that God has given you. 2, we have hypostasis. With those of you who study theology, that sounds very familiar when you get to 3rd century. Literally means to put under. It is a confidence applied to the mind. Remember, the enemy's target is the mind. He isn't going to pull your affections until he first impacts your thinking. So, if you read it again, for we have become partakers of Christ if we seize the beginning of our assurance. What we know is true, what we're confident in, because the one who said it is true in himself. And we hold that truth until the end. It's that thinking, that reality that gets you through the turmoils. When you're walking through your own personal wilderness experience and you're in the valley, just remember there's always a valley between 2 mountains. So when God's given you good times, praise him on it, grow in that time, because a valley's coming. You're either just coming out of one or you're going into one. But there's another mountain on the other end. But you got to grab your thinking today. You got to seize the moment God gave you. And let's finish it off with Hebrews 3:18 and 19. And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. You see, it's an article this time, not just a word that begins with A. That's why I have it highlighted here. So, apitheo, number 1, means to persuade. So if you add the article here to those who are disobedient, it's because they remain unpersuaded. Literally, not persuaded. So they're not persuaded of the truth that Jesus is the Messiah, which is, they maintain that's what they're disobedient to. That disobedience leads to every other disobedience, because everyone's under authority. If it's not his, it's typically your own. And that's what gets you in trouble. This word again. That word sounds familiar because we read it earlier. Do you remember? It's from the Greek word pistos, which is belief. So apistia is not a believer, literally. So at the end of all this, you can at least say, when Pete studies the passage for the sermon, he at least breaks it down. But I got so much out of this because it's so interesting. Because you read it, it seems difficult at first, like, oh, God, what are you saying? But when you unpack it like this, there's so much in there. Because for the Hebrews, disobedient and unbelief go hand in hand. Look what it says. They didn't enter his rest because they were disobedient. They didn't enter his rest because of unbelief, which means they were disobedient. See how that works? Oh, light bulb. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool. Now, we'll always get it wrong, right? And parents know this. And this is why God is our Father, and when you have the family structure, it's so important to see this, right? You always know when your kids are they're stumbling as they're trying to get it right. And you know that difference between a kid who's more on the prodigal end, where they're not stumbling in the right direction, they're walking in the wrong direction. And they stumble doing something right once in a while because they're trying to win your affections, mostly because they want something. So there's a difference there, and God knows the difference. God knows the difference, but sometimes it's hard for us to know the difference. So let's read the passage, and let's add that context there, and I literally will have the word I'm replacing in italicized. So let's go ahead and read it together. So it's kind of interesting, and see if this highlights it a little bit more for you. Take care, brethren, that there not be in any one of you a maliciously poisonous, non-Christian, unbelieving heart that stands aloof, hardened from the living God. But exhort and challenge one another day after day, as long as it's still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the strategic delusion of sin. For we have become partakers of Christ if we seize the beginning of our mental assurance, firm until the end. While it is said today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me. For who has provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moses? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who had sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? Now look at this. He was angry with them at 40 years, but we just saw the reference to Psalm 95, which references number 14 through 17, which was talking about the end of the 40 years. Because God knew who the unbelievers were. And he used the wilderness experience to tease them out and expose them to everyone. God will always expose. It's just a matter of time. Verse 18, and to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest? But to those who were not persuaded. So we see that they were not able to enter because of not being believers. Kind of stands out a little different. Now, a translator would never add all these words to it because that's not their job. Their job is to go from source language to import, add a word. Word. But the English is so broad in general. It's not that particular. But when you read it like that, it stands out a little bit differently. So the question then becomes, what is the warning for us? What is the warning for us? We got to seize the day. We got to seize the day that God had given us. Don't squander the time God has given you. Friends, because number one, there are unbelievers in the church who are malicious and trying to persuade you away. Notice I put small c, because it's a contradiction to say that there's unbelievers in a capital C church, which is the Church Universal. Those are believers around the world, are part of the capital C church. You see it all the time. I'm seeing it today. You watch some of these, quote, pastors who call themselves in the ministry and show up, with holding political signs and some of the evil things they're saying. These are evil, maliciously wicked people who are not believers trying to persuade you. Trying to persuade. And in a post-Christian culture, a culture that's divorced Jesus, I say, so we're on the back end of it, all you young folks, you've got bad data purposely put there to persuade you. So when you hear the truth of the gospel, it sounds like a lie because you emotionally invested in something, in belief, in a book that's now updated probably every 30 minutes. We used to get updates in college books every, couple years. Now they're all online. So, and through high school and elementary school, they're persuading you. And it's so important that you take hold. Today, the Southern Baptist Convention, who survived the social gospel in the 70s, they're the only denomination that got out of it alive. And they held true to God's word. They are succumbing to social justice. They aren't going to make it if they don't hold fast and stand true. There are evil, malicious people in the convention trying to pull them away. This is why evil, malicious people like a George Soros is funding some of these activities in the Baptist Convention. And these social justice, quote, Bible studies by Pastor Wallace and others who are evil, malicious people in the church. It's so important that you don't miss it. You can, number two, resist God's grace. For those who are standing aloof, your heart will get harder and not softer. This is an obvious thing. People do it all the time. There's an old saying that I've become fond of that says this, quote, the same sun that melts the wax hardens the clay. The same sun that melts the wax hardens the clay. I would say the same sun, S-O-N, who in his grace and mercy died in our place sacrificially for our sin, melts the wax, it hardens the clay. It hardens the clay as someone who resists and goes, what sin? It melts the wax in the heart of someone saying, you did that for me? For me. It's a different thing. You hear the truth without responding, your heart will become harder. It's an established fact that a bad choice made at one moment impacts the next moment that is similar. And this is what our mind does with general information to particulars. And we all know this. I want you to pay attention. Be a student of yourself. Forget about being a student of everyone else, because you're not going to be good at it. God's really good at that. Be a student of yourself. And you'll find yourself that when you make one bad decision, you cheat once in sports, cheat once on a test, cheat once on your spouse. The next time you have a situation that is similar, it's easier to do that for one reason. The healthy fear of the Lord, of the consequences of that, is gone. And it becomes easier. Then you start believing your own advertising campaign. Oh, I got this. I can have the best of both worlds. Oh, then God's gracious. And then, boom, he'll expose it at just the right time if the enemy doesn't do it first. It will happen. Now, I want to challenge some young folks today, because this is the challenge of growing up in a Christian home in a weird way. It's a unique challenge, honestly. I grew up in a non-Christian home. I came to Christ at 25. I became persuaded after researching how we got the Bible and studying and doing all these things. This is why I love apologetics. I knew the Bible was true, and I knew what it said about me was true. And I submitted to it and gave my life to Christ. But when you grow up in a Christian home and your heart's a little hard, just because you grew up in a Christian home, you got the genetics. There's no Christian gene, so it doesn't make you a Christian. And parents, you need to really realize that. The scariest thing you can raise is a very polite son or daughter who doesn't believe in Christ. Because you say things to yourself. Let's play the movie. I've heard that before. Oh, this is the part where you do John 3:16. I've heard that before. For God so loved the blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Okay, time to go home. And you miss the depth and richness of what is actually being said. Because you say to yourself, I've heard that before. You've already mentally made a hardened decision where you go, I don't know if that's true for me. And it becomes easier to do it again and again and again. Then you sit here on Sunday and you're like, yada, yada, yada. Pete did a big study. Yeah, it's Hebrews. That's kind of cool. Are we done yet? Don't harden your heart, friends, because unbelief will lead to disobedience. And you'll think it's fun. Oh, it's all fun at a time, of course. If it wasn't fun, you wouldn't be telling, hello, I'm a recovering sinner. I always say I was always a Christian. I spent 25 years building my testimony. You don't want a testimony. See that baggage there? That's half of my baggage I brought to the cross. Then the sin, then it moves forward more. You get a hardened heart. You start falling away, which leads to more unbelief, which leads to more of a hardened heart. And then it catches up to you. Then you commit the Proverbs 19:2 error, where it says the first to present it, or excuse me, where it says a man's own folly ruins his life, yet his heart rages against the Lord. Proverbs 19:3, that is. So here, you're in a Christian context. You're hardened to God. You're walking in disobedience. Something happens and you blame God for it. You're growing up in a Christian family of two sinners who love the Lord, who you're now, as you become a teenager, you start realizing your mom and dad aren't perfect. Duh. They're saved sinners. And then you start realizing that, and you start, moving away. Move toward God. Don't harden your heart. It'll catch you in time. That's the difference between a profession of faith and an actual possession of faith. Number 3, this is important. There was a Judas with Jesus when there were only 12 followers. So let me ask you a question. How many Judases are there when there's 400 followers? when there's 4,000? When there's 40,000, 400,000, 4 million? There's a lot. The key is Jesus knew Judas's heart. The other 11 thought that he was one of them. How shocked were they to find out when Judas left? Because remember what the scripture says. They thought he went off on an errand that Jesus sent him because he was trusted. He was really close to Jesus. Someone that close to Jesus takes off to only then find out that he hung himself because he was not a true believer. He was not one of them. As 1 John 2:19 says, quote, they went out from among us, but they were not really of us. I hear people complain about Christians in the church. I complain about Christians in the church. Believe me, Passive Aggressives for Christ, I swear, is a women's ministry. It drives me crazy. I don't know how my wife puts up with some of this stuff. But guess what? Don't judge Jesus in a church by a Judas in the church. Whether they really are a Judas or just are have not allowed the redemptive, sanctifying work of the Holy Spirit to work in that area. Don't judge Jesus in the church because there's a Judas in the church. If you're looking to be a fault finder in the church, that says more about your heart than it says about the church. Because there's lots of good in the church. The church is the hope of the world. The hope of the world. All these broken, fallen people in here, every one of us, unbelievable to think that we're the hope of the world. It's an amazing thing to think. Number 5, Christian, it takes a moment to ruin what you build on Jesus. How about games that seem harmless, but ruin all that you've built on Jesus? Let me backstep a little bit. If you see an artist painting or something that someone created, or these architectural things that are all throughout Turkey and in Syria and Iraq that are totally being destroyed by ISIS and terrorists, right? The skill and discipline, and right thinking it takes to make a beautiful painting that's as big as a screen takes months, years to accomplish. Any fool in here can ruin that with the same paint, with no skill, no discipline. Like, throw something on there, gone. It takes discipline to build something beautiful. It takes no discipline at all to build a train wreck. So there's harmless games that we think no big deal of. And you think it's new, we had them too. Like truth or dare. I'll dare you to blah, blah, blah. I dare you to kiss the person next to you. Here you are, you've been saving your first kiss, waiting for something, and you squander it at a moment for a game. Or truth, someone trying to pluck something out of you as if the game gives them a right to know something that's very personal to you. Or how about other games that make you do something or selling you this delusion of, well, what's the big deal? It's just a game. Always be ready no matter what. I was just at a wedding of my niece, my wife's side niece, Callie, and she was marrying Phil. It was a beautiful Christian wedding. Came to Christ, been walking with Christ in college and got married. And at this wedding, it was so fascinating. I have no idea who this girl is. I have no idea who this guy is. But at the wedding, there's one of these traditions that slithered into weddings. So here we're at the reception, and the bride throws the bouquet. Everyone seen that, right? And the woman catches the bouquet. All the single ladies out there. And then most adults, if you're like me, you yell at your kids. You say, hey, Mom, chop, a little discipline. No 5-year-olds out there. That's cute and all, but bring them back. Then you've got the guys get out there, right? And what's he flick back? The garter, right? Then the DJ has a moment. 2 strangers, maybe they're friends, I have no idea. I can see it on her face. Is she going to squander her integrity for the sake of pleasing a crowd at a wedding? Is she going to put out her leg and buy the tradition that every inch up gives them years of good luck? Sell her integrity to be touched inappropriately in a public setting? She wouldn't do it. Now, whether the guy and girl knew each other, I have no idea. But they didn't do it. That moment came out of nowhere. Did you think she saw that coming? No clue. I don't even know if she knew the tradition. No clue. Boom. She had a moment. She made the right choice. And I'll never forget it. I just have to go. Way to seize the day and not squander the beautiful life of integrity that you build on the Lord Jesus and have it fall for a foolish tradition. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for all you've done for us, Lord. And Lord, we are trying to build our lives on you, on the rock, not the sand. And Lord, we're clumsy when we build. But we're so grateful, Lord, for you as the Holy Spirit to provide correction, proper measuring, directly to us or through believers who challenge us and encourage us in our thinking. Help us to be good family members, good brothers and sisters, that when a friend challenges us because we're about to squander the integrity we've built, that we don't push them away, but we pull them in and we thank them for the challenge. As your word says in the book of Proverbs, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but it's the enemy that multiplies kisses. So Lord, help us not to have ears to hear what we want to hear, Lord, but to hear from you alone. May we walk uprightly, may we be careful with who we surround ourselves with, so as we're walking in the wilderness of this world, that we know that beside us are people who are encouraging us and challenging us to walk with you. For your word says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. And Lord, we are so easily misled by a fun personality, by a desire to be at the popular table, whatever that looks like, that we allow bad company to corrupt good character. Lord, help us to seize the day and say, starting today, no way. Any of us, Lord, walking baby steps in the wrong direction, Lord. May we seize the day you've given us and walk in hope, knowing that walking away from you leads to despair. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.